All right, everybody. Well, welcome to this week's material in Real Estate Market Analysis with Ruff. This particular week, what we're doing is we're taking a real quick kind of a bird's eye look, an overview look at the office product type. Now, what you're going to discover, right? This is our textbook for Real Estate Market Analysis this quarter. Your author of your class text has, I believe, deliberately made the office product type the very shortest chapter in the textbook, because when you really kind of delve into the office product type, it's very simple to understand. Essentially, the bottom line is what we're looking for in the office product type is we're looking for incremental growth in office employment. So the BLS Labor Classification Code, BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, in the office product type, what we're looking for is employment growth in the finance, insurance, and real estate sectors in the employment standards in the United States. So we're looking for growth in office employment in, architecture, engineering, banking, construction, etc., right? Planning. So what we're looking for is anything that's related to real estate. We're looking to employment growth in those particular categories. Now, here's the interesting issue now that we're dealing with in this particular product type. Since pandemic, right, since basically the beginning or thereabouts of 2020, what we've learned is that the office product type, we don't need to house people in the same bricks and mortar office building. We just don't need to do that anymore. We're proving this. I mean, half of our class this quarter is by Zoom. Half of our class is in class in person, and half is via online. Now, if we really truly looked at this, we could say that we don't have to get together in class on campus for those particular classes during the quarter. We don't have to do that. We can still deliver the necessary content that we need to here completely online. Same thing with office employment. I mean, let me give you an example, a true example. At the beginning of pandemic, my partner, who is employed in the healthcare profession, his employer sent them all home at the beginning of pandemic. And so I asked him, I said, I'm just kind of curious, do you guys collaborate? Do you guys kind of get together and do powwows in person? Do you collaborate in the office? He said, no. I said, well, how do you communicate? Well, we email each other. Now, this is healthcare, so everything has to be documented, right? For HIPAA, everything has to be documented. There has to be a paper trail. So they're doing work, and they don't even have to be in the same bricks and mortar office together. I mean, we can email from thousands and thousands of miles away. We can chat when we're thousands and thousands of miles away. We can video conference when we're thousands and thousands of miles away. So then what pandemic has proved is that we don't have to be housed in the same building at the same time to get our work done. This is exactly what the office product type is experiencing now in 2024. So, or what it will continue to experience in 2025, 2026, what it began experiencing years and years ago. So let's take a look here. Okay, let's take a look. So what I've done is I've put together a little bit of a PowerPoint. It's an abbreviated PowerPoint. It's not quite lengthy because the office product type doesn't need a lot of length or breadth to explain. It's very simple to understand. What we're looking for is growth in employment in finance, insurance, and real estate. And again, we don't have to be housed in the same building together. So let's take a look here real quick. What we've already kind of determined throughout the course is that regardless of the product type, we need to delineate between the primary, secondary, and tertiary trade areas. Okay, we have to delineate among those three. The primary trade area, as we've already learned, is the area from which, hold on one second here, from which about 75% of our customers will be derived. Whether it's office, retail, housing, industrial, it doesn't matter. The majority of our customers are going to come from this primary trade area. And then what we said earlier in the course is that on a secondary basis, about 20 or so percent, these percentages are going to fluctuate depending on who you talk to, but about 20% or so of our customers will be derived from the secondary trade area. And then finally, about 5% of our customers will be derived from the tertiary, the far out trade area. Okay, this is the same with regard to office. It's the same with regard to residential. It's the same with regard to retail. Okay, let's continue. So then there are certain factors that we want to consider when we're going to delineate the office trade area. Okay, now, a housing trade area is going to be typically much smaller, much more condensed than an office trade area. Okay? Offices tend to draw from a very far distance, tends to draw occupants and customers from very far distances. So then what we want to figure out here when we're delineating the office trade area is the location of competitive buildings. If I have 500,000 square feet of office located right next door to a similar building built at the same time, same finish and fixtures, same fit and finish, same construction, same design, then they're basically interchangeable product types, interchangeable commodities. So then the location of the competitive buildings is one of the inputs that's going to determine the office trade area. Okay. Now, next point here, street and road patterns, ingress and egress. If you've taken perhaps real estate principles here with us at the university, then what you probably understood is that there's always going to be some ingress. How do I get in to the property? How do I enter it? And then egress, how do I exit it? How do I pull into parking? And how do I get out of parking? How do I enter the site? And how do I leave the site? So then these barriers can help determine the office trade area. Okay, next point, proximity to mass transit. Are you located fairly close to a transit stop? That's always a good thing. Are you located fairly close to a red line, what I used to call red line? I guess they're now called different letters of the alphabet, the A line, the B line, the C line, I guess, here in LA. Well, in fact, the first north-south train artery subterranean was the red line from North Hollywood to, Union Station. So that was called the red line. So then are we close to transit stops? Is it going to be easy for office employees to get to the office building, then to exit the office building, leave, and then get home? Is it going to be easy to do that, or is it going to be fairly challenging? So then proximity, closeness to the transit stops will help determine the shape and the size of the office trade area. Okay? Commute times from residential areas. Are we close to or are we far away from the residential node? Proximity to other facilities. In other words, this is all called, what Brett talks about in her textbook on office, is what is called interdependence. Are these trade areas, are these different geographic areas, are they kind of linked together or are they not? If they're linked together, then that's going to help define the shape and the size of the trade area. Okay, and then finally here, what Brett talks about in the textbook is psychological and perceptual barriers to access. In other words, do I have to cross a railroad track in order to get to the other side? Do I have to cross a river or a lake or a stream in order to get to the other side? If there are these perceptual breaks in person-made or natural breaks to the geography, then that also is going to help distinguish and shape the size and shape of the office trade area. Okay, let's continue. Now, what we really want to focus on, and what Brett talks about in the textbook, is this particular slide here. Office demand drivers. We've talked about this in the residential product type. What are the drivers of demand for housing? We talked about this in retail. What are the drivers of demand for retail space? It typically revolves around employment, disposable incomes, new household formations, net new population growth, right? So it's all based on that. And if you look at the underlying fundamental for all of this, it's all about population growth, people. The more people we have coming in to a particular trade area, the more demand there will be for these product types. Okay? So let's continue. So then what we're looking for in the office demand driver is this, the FIRE sector. Now, FIRE, as I mentioned at the very beginning of this video, was finance, insurance, and real estate. So then what we're going to do when we're taking a look at if there's going to be demand for a particular office space product type is there going to be increases in employment in the finance, insurance, and real estate sectors? If there's not going to be demand, if there's going to be a contraction of employment, we're going to be losing office jobs in finance, insurance, and real estate, then typically office rents will decline. Because what we have essentially is an increase in office square footage that is available for lease. And then in order to absorb this space, in order for this space to become absorbed, then typically what owners of office stock will have to do is reduce the price per square foot. So then if we have an increase in the rate or growth of employment in this sector, then we're likely going to have an increase of demand for space, which is going to increase the price per square foot. Now, the kicker is that in order to kind of predict that the price per square foot is going to increase is if there is no other alternative for that office space, which now is not the case. We know that since pandemic, we don't have to be housed in the 50-story office building. We don't have to do this anymore. I mean, I've been working from home for years. Before working from home became a thing, I've been working from home for years. I love it. I can't stand the buzz of all that activity in the office. I like quiet. Just keep it quiet. I work best when there's quiet. So then I don't have to be housed in a 50-story office building. Pandemic has proven this. This is why when you look at San Francisco, demand drivers for office space, is there a great deal of demand for vacant office space in San Francisco? Oh my God, no. Have you seen what's going on in San Francisco? It looks like Blade Runner on a bad day. I mean, there's walking zombies in San Francisco traversing, office lobbies. So demand for office space in San Francisco has imploded. Why? Because we don't have to be housed in office buildings anymore. That's the bottom line. So then this is the particular reason why I believe Brett, the author of your textbook, has given the office category simply a gentle person's nod. She's saying, okay, we have these products called office space, so then let's throw in a chapter in the textbook, even though we know we don't have to be housed in these buildings anymore. So then the way that we're going to measure this in terms of our work here in the class is basically a two-step process. Number one, we're going to project the increase in employment in this finance, insurance, and real estate sector within the next period of time, usually a year. And then what we're going to do is we have to estimate, okay, what is the amount, the number of square feet per employee that we need to kind of project for this office space to be housed or for this demand. So traditionally, over the last number of years, the average number of square feet per employee has been around 200 to 250 square feet per employee. But this has been declining. It used to be at least 250 per employee on average. Now, the partner, in the law firm, okay, they've got to have the big Taj Mahal suite, right? They have to have 2,500 square feet with their own personal bathroom, maybe with a wet bar, with a view. All right, those are partners. They need more square feet because they're a partner. But the low person on the totem pole really doing the work, they only require a couple hundred square feet. So then on average, it's going to be about 200 to 250 square feet per employee. But that's been on a decline. It used to be 250. Now it's 200. I envision a place in the market over the next few years where literally you only need 100, 150 square feet per employee. We don't have to go into the office anymore. We don't have to do that. I can deliver this class online in the comfort of my own home. You could be in your bedroom slippers, sipping a hot chocolate, eating cinnamon toast in class here with me. Why do you have to drive to campus and pay $10 for parking? It's not necessary anymore. But we have these types of classes. So then what we're going to do is we're going to project the increase in employment over the next period of time. We're going to assign a number of square feet, and then we're going to simply project what is the total number of square feet we need in the marketplace to house these office employees. And if we're under square footage, then we need to build. If we're over square footage, then we need to not build. We need to, release. We need to rethink our absorption strategy. All right? Now, another thing that Brett talks about in the textbook here is this concept called churning. Churning is where an office brokerage firm perhaps reports that there's been an absorption of space. Like, we just leased 25,000 square feet of space in this particular trade area. Well, in the whole scheme of things, that sounds pretty positive, right? We've leased 25,000 square feet of office space. But if all we did was move it from office building A right next door to office building B, has the market really absorbed the space? No, it has not. It simply moved this occupancy from building A to building B. That is called churning. I want you to be very careful of that as you read some of these market studies that I'm posting at the class dashboard. Okay? So understand that what we're looking for is employment in the finance, insurance, and real estate sectors. Okay? Now, in terms of data needs, there's going to be a lot of relatively good data sources. I've posted I think one or two office market studies or office market kind of absorption reports here in the class at the class dashboard. So just pay attention to those. But there's a lot of good free data sources that are available out there. Okay, let's continue. Then what we want to kind of pay attention to here briefly is the outline for a market analysis report for office. Now, the outline is going to be basically the same as you're going to find in any particular market study. There's going to be an executive summary. We have kind of like an idea. We're going to perhaps posit a particular conclusion. Is there demand for office space at this particular site in this particular trade area, or is there not? We're going to present an overview. We're going to certainly delineate the trade area as well as do a kind of a brief site analysis. We're going to analyze the demand for this office space. Is employment in finance, insurance, and real estate increasing, or is it contracting? If it's increasing, then depending on our vacant space, maybe it's kind of like a leading indicator that we might want to think about providing some additional office space in the future. So this is going to be two basic inputs. What is my incremental demand, right? And then what is my available space presently? If my incremental demand drastically exceeds what my available space is to absorb, that means that it bodes well for new office space. If my increase in office employment relative to my available vacant space does not absorb the vacant space within a brief period of time, then it says that I should not develop office space. So this is what we need to take a look at. Part of an additional market analysis report outline is, of course, we're taking a look at the analysis of demand, clearly an input, but we also need to look at what is our available supply. What is our existing stock? If our existing stock can absorb the increase in office employment, then there's probably no need to develop any additional office space. But if our additional supply is not enough to absorb the additional demand, the incremental demand over time for additional office space, then it bodes well that we develop more. That is the fundamental nature of reading an office analysis report. Okay. We also certainly want to take a look at our competitive position relative to other space. We want to project or forecast our revenue streams. That is clearly going to be an input to our financial analysis for this particular office space that maybe we intend to develop or not. We don't even know. But this is what we're going to look at as we're making that decision. Let's continue. Now, this particular slide, I really want you to pay a great deal of attention to this particular slide. And here's the reason why. Right here, Dr. Reina Civitanito was my real estate market analysis professor when I was enrolled in the USC Master of Real Estate Development program at USC, from which I graduated in 1993. Right now, Dr. Civitanito was a brilliant real estate economist. She was absolutely probably one of the best real estate instructors that I've ever had in my entire academic career. So what I'm bringing to you here in this summary on one slide is years and years of Dr. Civitanito's work. What she did was basically take a look at the office product type, and she said, look, there is going to be likely some advantages to the location of your space. There may be some worker amenities or disamenities that we'll talk about in just a moment, and there is probably going to be some local institutional controls over the nature of this office space. Okay, so let me drop this down here briefly. I think it's probably better like this. Probably like that, okay? So watch. What are the advantages that the location brings to the firm in terms of productivity? So what Dr. Civitanito found was basically three different columns. Number one, the distance to the central business district, or the distance to the central business core. The closer you are to the central business district, likely the more advantages the location are going to bring to firm productivity. Okay? Second point, how close are you to the nearest airport? The closer that you are, the more that's going to bring location advantages to the firm's productivity. Thirdly, what are the number of freeway miles? I think this is an interesting one. What's the number of freeway miles passing through this commercial district? The more freeway miles that are passing through it, the better for distribution and transportation. Okay, let's take a look at the second column. What about worker? Here we have firm. Here we have worker. So then, what are these amenities or disamenities that might be brought to the worker based on this location, the office worker? Well, what about the district's crime rate? The higher the crime rate, the less advantageous, the less desirable to the worker it will be to work there, because simply the crime rate is just higher than what they can find in some other trade area. Number two, retail employment. Retail employment. Some students are kind of confused here with regard to retail employment as it relates to office. Well, think about it. I used to work in the U.S. Bank Tower in downtown Los Angeles when it was called First Interstate Tower, First Interstate Bank. Then U.S. Bank bought, I guess, First Interstate, and now U.S. Bank has their logo up on the First Interstate, formerly the First Interstate Tower downtown, now U.S. Bank Tower. Well, think about it. If you work in a big, tall office building, is there anything to do during lunch? Can I maybe grab a cup of coffee or maybe a sweet roll or a pastry or something, maybe before I go upstairs in the elevator to the office? Could I grab maybe a chicken pesto pasta penne or something maybe after work while I'm waiting for traffic to die down after I'm done at the office? So then retail employment per resident population is one of the things that might benefit a worker, right? Is there anything for me to do during lunch? Once I'm done with my burrito, once I'm done with my caprese sandwich, can I go and buy a little tie? Maybe, can I go and buy a wallet? Can I go and buy a belt? My goodness, I need some new belts. Can I buy a belt there during lunch? So then retail employment is one of the things that workers look for when they're looking for places to work. So then the more retail employment per resident population, the better for the worker. If it's better for the worker, it's better for the firm. Next point, education dollar per enrolled pupil by school district. The more money that is being spent per pupil, typically, although not always, but typically the higher the test score, the higher the classroom, the better the classroom experience, right? If all I did was give you things to read, then the classroom experience here probably would not be as valuable as if I throw in some videos, right? I mean, this is just the way people learn. So then the higher the education dollar, the better for the worker. Now, this point here, distance to the ocean. We've talked about this in residential and retail, right? If you're close to a water element, the higher per square foot the rent goes. If you're close to a water element, the closer you are to the Pacific Ocean, here in Los Angeles, Santa Monica, Malibu, Manhattan Beach, right? The closer that you are to the ocean, the higher the per square foot value for the land. So then the closer we are to the ocean, the more desirable it's going to be for the worker. If it's more desirable for the worker, then the firm is going to want to attract these workers who want to live close to these amenities. So see how this all is kind of intertwined here? And then finally, location institutional controls. What about commercial office zoning? What about density constraints or growth moratoria? If the city or the county is favoring office development, well, then we probably are going to get some goodies attached to that. Okay, so this is a really, really, really critical slide here for the office product type with regard to firm advantages, worker advantages or disadvantages, and then, of course, local institutional controls, the local policies that the city or the county is instituting to kind of encourage or discourage office development. Okay, very important slide. Pay particular attention to this one. And then we get into linkages and transfer costs. This is essentially what we're going to throw at you when we get to industrial. In other words, the closer that we are to our ultimate end market, the better, because it's going to reduce transportation costs. Therefore, if we can reduce transportation costs, we can reduce input costs. If we can reduce input costs, we reduce the ultimate price point that the consumer is going to have to pay. Okay? With regard to submarkets, it's kind of a busy slide here with a number of words. But what I was trying to get at was basically take the office chapter from the Brett textbook and basically kind of condense it here into one slide. So what we want to understand is that office buildings do tend to be clustered together because of what are called agglomeration effects, right? This is kind of like when you stack things on top of each other. Well, then the idea here is that the stacked result is going to be better than if these inputs were spread out all over the place, whatever the inputs might be. So in terms of office buildings being clustered, what we're doing is we're reducing commute times for architectural plans. Now remember, just about everything can be done online now. We don't have to necessarily hire a courier or a messenger service to deliver a set of plans from Office B to Office A. We can electronically disseminate them over the internet. So again, right? I mean, pandemic has proven this, that we don't have to have these 50, 60, 70-story office buildings to conduct business anymore. We just don't have to do it. This is why this chapter is very simple. So then what Brett kind of summarizes here at the end of her text is that there's basically 4 steps to kind of estimate the demand for an office product square footage. We're going to estimate the white collar employment for a chosen base year. We're going to compute, not computer, but compute the square footage of per employee that we need, around 200. We're going to compute, not computer. I have to correct that. We're going to compute the growth in white collar employment over time, and then simply then forecast the number of square feet of new office space that's going to be demanded in a particular a trade area over a particular given period of time. That's it. Again, compute the increment, compute our existing stock. If there's a spread, build. If there's not a spread, don't build. That's office in a nutshell. So realistically, this particular product type is very, very straightforward. It's extremely straightforward. Okay, so let me get this for you here. So that is the office product type in a nutshell. The key takeaways here are to understand that there's a certain number of square feet per employee that is going to be absorbed in the office space. For past decades, it used to be around 250 square feet per employee. These days, it's around 200. The number of square feet per employee has been declining over the last at least 20 years. Technology, right? We don't need as much office space as we used to. I remember when my Aunt Dot bought her first computer in her accounting office. It literally took, I would say, about, realistically, 500 square feet for the computer. The terminals, the station, the printer, dot matrix back then. I mean, that computer now can do what my phone can do in less than 1 square foot. So we don't need as much office space as we used to. And pandemic, again, is proving that. So I'm hopeful that this little video has kind of explained for you the office product type. We're looking for growth in the finance, insurance, and real estate sectors. We're going to, of course, consider our existing vacant space. If we need more space than what we have as vacancy, we build. If we need less than what we have as vacancy, we simply don't build. And that is the essential point in this particular chapter in the textbook for the course. I'm hopeful that you are enjoying the course. I'm hopeful that kind of helped explain the office product type, and I'll see you in class.